This heat wave is gripping parts of Europe with temperatures reaching more than 40 degrees Celsius.
Florida's normally warm coastal water is now more like a hot
The
tub.
poor air quality is caused by more than 150 active wildfires.
Look at the mayhem caused by torrential rain.
Canada's worst wildfire season on record.
Climate news can be overwhelming. It's easy to feel powerless with missed targets and grim reports. The world has a lot of work to do together to avoid a climate catastrophe. But to keep pushing up the hill, sometimes we need to look down it to remind ourselves that progress is possible. First, looking globally. The International Energy Agency projects that by 2030, demand for coal, oil, and natural gas will peak, and nearly half of the world's electricity supply will come from renewables, which includes wind, solar, and biomass. Meanwhile, in Europe, nearly a quarter of energy consumed last year was clean. One of the leaders in this transition is Portugal. The country aims to be carbon neutral by 2045, and at the end of October, it set a record. Its electricity came from 100% renewable sources for 6 days straight.
We were not using gas. We no longer have coal plants in Portugal. So we were able to use hydro, wind, solar, and biomass to generate all the energy necessary to cover the energy needs of the industrials and the households, and even surpass that needs. And we were exporting energy to Spain.
It's all being made possible due to lowered costs, driven largely by China. Its clean energy manufacturing and exports are surging, bringing down costs significantly. Globally, solar energy prices have fallen more than 80% since 2010. Now, wind and solar are the cheapest forms of electricity.
China's expansion of clean energy manufacturing capacity is also important globally because it creates so many positive benefits in terms of development and growth and so on. And many other regions want to replicate China's success.
It's good news for the climate crisis, but there are concerns about China dominating the market and pushing other countries out of the global energy economy. China now accounts for 80% of the global production of solar panels. And while it is the leading producer of coal, it's expected to see emissions decline in 2024 after a boom in its own wind and solar capacity.
There's incredible momentum around the world when it comes to renewables. They are being driven by market forces. So we have a climate imperative that countries are acting on that started the transition. But because we've seen this decline in the cost of wind and solar, that has now flipped, where we've reached a tipping point.
Here at home, the transition to renewable energy is happening much more slowly. In Canada, last year, only $2.8 billion was invested in solar energy, compared with $37 billion in oil and gas investments. However, globally, this year, for the first time, investment in solar energy is outpacing oil.
We know that renewable energy can thrive in Canada. We know that we have the resources to do it, but we do need to make sure that we are providing consistent signals.
Signals coming from countries around the world that recognize a move away from fossil fuels is needed to curb global warming.
Global demand for oil and gas are going. They are in decline, and they will continue to decline.
If we now take decisions, tripling for 2030, the renewables energy available. It is possible, and it is cheaper than doing anything else.
And a commitment of tripling renewable energy capacity by 2030 is one of the top agenda items at the International Climate Conference taking place in Dubai.
The heart of the climate policy discussion now, the COP conference in Dubai. Joining us from there, Susan Ormiston. Susan, renewables have clearly been a big focus this year.
Well, indeed, as you just heard, it's a new agenda item here at COP28. The idea is to triple renewables over the next 7 years, and 118 countries have already signed up, including Canada. For countries with a lot of renewables, it's a big commitment. For those who have little, it's not as much, but it's there and it's gaining a lot of traction. And also, you know, renewable energy is having this moment in Europe, partly because of the war between Russia and Ukraine. It was a big scare for oil and gas imports going into Europe.
Is there any pushback to this growth?
Yes, I mean, some skeptical that these pledges and declarations, and there are plenty of them here at COPs, that they actually happen, that in reality some of those promises fall short or completely disappear. Canada has signed up for this renewable tripling by 2030, but you know, we've got some pullback on incentives in Ontario, and Alberta has cut renewable development for about 6 months. So we'll see how it all ends up. And then there's the idea, if you put so much attention on renewables, do you lift the pressure on oil and gas companies and curbing those fossil fuels? And we talked to a leader from the Marshall Islands in the Pacific, Tina Steege. Here's what she said about that.
Of course, we need to scale up renewables massively, but it's only half the solution. We know the root cause of this problem is fossil fuels, and unless we also at the same time address that root cause, which is the production of fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels, the planet will continue to burn.
But there is no doubt that there is growth in this sector. We're hearing that all over this conference. And just this week, we went out to one of the largest solar plants in the world, just south of Abu Dhabi. 21 square kilometers of solar panels can power 160,000 houses. Now, you know, it's a small fraction of the energy use here in the UAE, but around the world, we are seeing its growth.
Susan Ormiston in Dubai tonight.